Hello, my name is Jesus Aguilar. I'm a student at FIU for Artificial Intelligence. This course is CAP 6776. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to talk about NLP and sentiment analysis. A few words about me. I work as an engineer for a long time in the oil industry. I got a bachelor's degree in metallurgical engineering. That's metallurgy. I work in corrosion and a master's degree in industrial engineering. Thereafter, when I was like 15 years ago, I became a Java developer, and I also ended up here. And I took a bachelor's degree in data analytics, Miami-Dade College. What is my data science definition? My definition, which I made myself, is an art. It's the art of attacking a problem by collecting relevant data and formulating hypotheses to reach a mathematical model or a visualization solution to reach a model that can explain why we're getting certain results, or even predict future results by using a minimum number and significant variables to obtain a minimum error. We define that threshold. That could explain such a behavior or provide a very reliable prediction. Well, I will compare this to polling, in which you select a few samples, predict, let's say, the outcome of an election, which involves millions, or explains factors that have been decisive for the performance of a big economy company in the now, but what should we take into account as factors in the future and stay ahead? Or to have a book or more and summarize each on X words. That's the key. You can summarize and read 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 pages, but we're talking about thousands. That's where natural language processing comes into play. The same as emails, infinite number of emails, etc., and determine the common commonalities and differences that are between them. I will describe data science and data science factor like in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tier level. First is the criteria, then the data, then the tools, then data visualization of the criteria, then machine learning, and then on the data visualization, reports and KPIs. And machine learning on the supervised and unsupervised, and which finally goes into a model and validation to discard unneeded features. And then we apply several tools for several purposes like NLP, image processing, mathematical analysis, cause and effect, and prediction. Now I'm going to talk about a brief introduction to natural language. In my company, our executive team, I'm sure in yours too, makes constant reference to NLP and other data science technologies like machine learning, etc. Why? Because of the ability to perform analysis of text, ability to measure sentiment analysis of customers' opinion, and ability to extract text and create voice robots to answer calls and automate the whole thing and make a customer use the fewer steps when they enter in contact with us, even guessing what they want. In this case, we're going to analyze a briefing from our CEO and use NLP to that end. All that you see there is a speech that he gave. I want to analyze that speech and see what comes out of it. Okay, now I took that text from the Eduardo Diaz Coronas, which is the CEO of TrackFront, and I start to analyze it. First, we import the necessary libraries. Among them, you'll see I describe each one of them: word cloud for data visualization technique, stop words, tokenization, lemmatization, and doc2text. Okay, now we open the file and I print it and see the whole text of that briefing that Mr. Corona gave. Now, we import the WordNet, which is a large database of English nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs, which is made by linguistics. And they are very helpful. It's handmade. We apply text cleaning to it, and we are going to see the unique words along the frequencies of current words using lemmatizing tokens. And then we use stop words to clean up the words that are at any value. We see that Mr. Corona is more interested on the briefing on customer, services, platform. That's the main message is conveying. And now we see the stop words that we have. We can add more if we want to. And we are going to lemmatize the speech. And this is the outcome. We can see it right here. Okay. But we can take the token and see them right here, printing the tokens. Then we can use a portrait steamer, which is a Python package, and which is taking the words to the root forms. Now we see the different tokens there are 979, and the different tokens we have one by one. Those are all of them. We can make a frequency distribution of the tokens, and we see them right here, and the length of the distribution, and the top 10 of them. Now we can make bigrams, trigrams, and n-grams, and that's the tokenizing of words into 1, 2, 3, or n words or phrases. Then we see the result, and we import text blob, which is also a package that is used for phrase extraction and sentiment analysis and classification. And these are the phrases from blob. And it's very useful to measure the sentiment. So here we say polarity, which is run from -1 to 1, and is 0.29%, which is kind of positive but much kind of neutral because it's a business briefing. And then we see subjectivity at 0.47%, which means it's slightly subjective, but not much. Okay, and this is a blob sentiment, which resumes polarity and subjectivity. And this is a library for blobs which can translate from Spanish, from English to Spanish. And we see that is fairly good. Even that I am a translator, I will see that we can tweak words here and there, which are not appropriate because he uses slangs, but it's fairly good. I would say 98% good. Very few things that will change. And I said it all depends on the context. The more text you give, the better it is. The less information you give, the less consistent and coherent it will be. And this is my text with their index. And this is using the Jensen package. But I would say that's all we have to get from there. because the rest are topics and this text is too small for topics. We cannot extract for reasonable topics for a text so small. And that ends this presentation from this side of it. As I said before in the Jupyter Notebook sheet, I ran a translation from that file and it was fairly good. Now, this is what I like the most about about the test blob and stuff. It's like you are able to get a beautiful suit, which it synthesizes and summarizes what was the main idea of what he was giving on that briefing. I could go back to several of his briefings, make a text file, and compare them against and see how he changes mood or importance from one to another. That will be interesting. And then you see if it's repetitive or not. But you can also see that using other tools. But typically, what do we want? We want to quantify the sentiment, whether it's positive or negative, which is polarity, and use sentiment analysis that works best. But that always depends on the context on which we're talking about. Polarity also knows orientation and on the emotion expressed. We can tune in for that. And also on substance, whether it is factual or not. And these are the results that I translated into my company's index, which is not -1 to 1, but on percentage, 29 and 74 subjectivity. Okay? So he was very businesslike. So, what applications do you visualize for yourself? There is a myriad of applications you can visualize because remember, the idea here is not whether you know what you can handle by reading 1 or 2 pages, but what you can handle when you don't have the ability to read thousands of pages, thousands of emails, thousands of complaints, etc. The other idea is to compare using cosine similarity, which I haven't used it here. I copy from an exercise that Dr. Wang gave us. And I could go and select, let's say, several speeches from Mr. Corona and see what are they like, or just to check if he's changing the subject or something else. Now, what is my NLP? My definition. This is done by me on whatever I have learned from Ding Wang, my professors, and the books I have read. I always say this is an art, definitely, because it takes more than a machine to do that. It takes reasoning and analysis. Basically, the idea is to convert the words into tokens and lemmas and topics. Topics is very important because the context on which we are translating. As a matter of fact, when you play with Google, the more context, the more words you gave them, the better the translation is because they are learning about your context as you provide more words. And they deduced what are the main ideas, what are the appropriate words that fit with them. So the idea is to extract key sentence data from a stream or static file based on the earlier. And that will help us to predict the model and its accuracies. Just as we shadow writing from the original writer. So we can become almost original writer if we know that we have a successful model on his ideas, on his topics. So in synthesis, what does NLP does? It combines computer science and linguistics and a deep understanding of a parts of a speech or language structure. That means syntax is key. It's not the same that syntax Spanish into English, which is similar, but from Spanish into, let's say, Mandarin. It's completely different. It's more phonetic rather than writing. And what is sentiment analysis? Well, one key thing is to get rid of stop words. And other thing is to be able to classify correctly which ones are positive or negative words. And order matters. Not bad is different than bad. Once we teach those words to a computer, it will be able to measure how we feel in a -1 to 1 scale, and also the same in polarity. What are some key terms that I think about? Corpus. It's a collection of text created mostly using Panda data frames, document term methods, which implies tokenizing, and count vectorizer, and using help scikit-learn library. And also, you receive tons of emails. These are things that are the applications and determines what items calls are either positive or common, positive or negative. And that will go with everything. It could apply to a financial institution, to Amazon, and also generate automatic reply backs based on the input times you are Amazon, etc., etc. Which scenarios do I visualize? The same with the email by client, the profits on a financial institution, and automatic trace playbacks. And also the strategy is the key part for me. Formulate a hypothesis. If this happens, then this should happen. And then you test hypothesis through your models. Clean the data. Key. Junk in, junk out. Plug the data and see if it makes sense and evaluate for outliers. Outliers provide, it seems negligible, but it might provide very valuable information if analyzed properly. Maybe that's what we're looking for and we don't know it. And applies our machine learning techniques, all of them, and see the insights of what we're talking about or trying to research on. And that's up to now. I will continue later on. I'm keen. I think I'm on 17 minutes. Wow, time's fly. Well, continue with the sentiment analysis and NLP. I want to share with you something that I use when I used to be a linguistic and work as a translator as a living, and it's that I use a very expensive program called Trados. And Trados has a workbench. The workbench lets you choose which language to use, from English to Spanish, Spanish into English, etc. And also helps you to create folders according to your topics. Uh, Let me tell you something. Here you start from scratch. You start like when you see the green and yellow. You start on the blue. Sorry, to get on the yellow, and you write on the yellow, and that what gets recorded exactly as you want it to be. Why is that important? Because let's say you have two companies, similar ones, uh, Visa and Mastercard. They have the same topics, but they use different terms to address each issue because they want to differentiate themselves among themselves. So you know you are talking about Visa and you know you are talking about MasterCard. So you create a translation memory on a folder for Visa and MasterCard on any language combination. And then you use concordance if you want to look for something you haven't found. And let's say Visa and MasterCard wants you as a new translator on board. They will send you probably, or it could be a text-to-text file, and you take the two texts and you compare them against each other, and you compare them against each other, and then you make a new translation memory for that guy based on the information you having before. And then you start working, and when you do it, you are talking and writing like if you always have been Visa and you always have been MasterCard. So this is something that is really not natural language, but it was the commencement of. I think I imagine that right now they might be using on the cloud, and it will be a lot easier. But it helps you differentiate among companies at the board and the way they use vocabulary per each business they have or per each situation they have, and then you classify on the topic. You see it's a regular customer. So don't look that inside because that outside, because when you say topics, Google might be very good at in the general, but not the ideal thing on the details, especially in marketing, where you use like keywords, key sentences to define a company. Okay, so with all that being said, I can tell you these are my sources that I use in this course. I use Alice Chow, recommended a lot on YouTube. She's super good. Natural Language Process Fundamentals by Soham Ghosh and Dwight Cunnings, and general snippets from Google. Being all that said, thank you so much for your audience and take care.